All right. I've got a special one for you today. We've got our Pope and Young Conservation Spotlight episode. However, we're doing that in conjunction with my favorite monthly special that we do, our Cook Wild episode. Why? Because April 9th through the 12th, Pope and Young is kicking off their convention with a Wild Game Showdown. So on this episode, I am joined by our Cook Wild chef, Mr. Foodie Mike C., who's going to be one of the celebrity judges at the showdown. I'm also joined by Michael Pendley, food editor for Real Tree. We've got Brooks Hansen from Camp Chef, our incredible sponsor for the showdown. And then we've got Justin Spring, executive director of Pope and Young. Now, here's how this is going to work. You're going to come in on the 9th with your wild game in hand. You're going to be given all day long to cook this and hang out and just have a good time. We're going to give you a full Camp Chef cooking system to use during the day. However, you also get to take that full Camp Chef cooking system and keep it. It's worth the price of admission in and of itself. So on this episode, we talk with our judges about what they're going to be looking for. We talk with Camp Chef and get some details on the units you're going to have so that you can have a heads up on what you can do with your wild game. We also talk about the stigma that quote unquote trophy hunters are only in it for the antlers and that we don't utilize the meat, which is the furthest thing from the truth. We talk about some of our favorite meats to use. We talk about some of our least favorite meats to use. It is a really fun episode, especially if you like cooking wild game. Guys, stay right here tuned in. This episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Pope and Young, and we are here to talk about the Pope and Young convention kicking off with the Cook Wild Showdown.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
There are very few things that I have with me every time I'm in the outdoors. Whether I am upland hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, just out shooting my bow, out checking trail cameras, very few things that are always with me. One thing that I always have with me is my binocular harness. And I searched the world for what I felt to be the best binocular harness. In my opinion, there's a fine line in binocular harnesses. Either you get a lot of space for everything you need, but they're big, bulky, and heavy, or they're super streamlined and I just don't have space for everything that I want to have on my chest. Alaska Guide Creations makes phenomenal harnesses. Guys, I wear them all the time. I wear my harness probably every day at some point in my day. And so comfortability is important to me. The way that it stays put where I want it is important to me, but also having enough compartments and being able to move things around modularly to fit it where I want it is also really important to me. I want my rangefinder in a certain place. I want my knife in a certain place. I want my binos to fold out in a certain way. And with Alaska Guide Creations, they have a full line of binocular harnesses that you can make exactly how you want them. I can put different pockets right where it's going to work best for me and my system. Guys, Alaska Guide Creations is the best, hands down, in my opinion, harness you can get, and take it from a guy who pretty much lives in them. Go check out Alaska Guide Creations for your next and your last bino harness. All right, gentlemen, let's go around the horn, do some introductions. It's kind of hard when you got 4 different guests on, so I'll just pick one out and give you time to introduce yourself. Some of you guys on this call might not even be acquainted with one another, but for a couple of you, this is your first time on the show. So I just want to introduce you to the listeners, but also that way all of us know who each other are and what our roles in this Cook Wild Showdown is going to be. So, Mr. Brooks, let's start with you, man.
I get to go first. Wow.
You get to go first. Well, you're on the top left of my screen, so I'm just reading. I'm just going through.
Perfect. I am Brooks Hansen, marketing communications, all things PR related at Camp Chef. Been a Camp Chef for almost 13 years, and just a great place to be. And even more importantly, if there's something that you want to cook outside, we're your go-to. So that's me, Brooks with Camp Chef.
You got their back, and you got the best looking haircut on the podcast. That's why I started with you, Justin Spring.
executive director of Pope and Young, came over last October, spent 15 years with BNC before that. So been in the outdoor conservation space my whole career, and, a passion on the side for the outdoor cooking side of things. My wife and I really enjoy doing that. We try to eat as much wild game as possible and make it real fancy. And it's kind of my way to not think about work. And so, this tie that we're working on is pretty awesome. Glad to have all you guys on here.
And before we jump too deep into the Wild Game Showdown, I do kind of want to talk about Pope and Young and their, kind of focus on wild game cooking moving forward. But before we do that, let's get through our introductions. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, Michael Pendley, Realtree.com, editorial staff, and also the Timber to Table editor for the website. Freelance for different magazines, websites, anybody that'll buy my stuff. Do a lot of wild game recipes. Been cooking wild game all my life, and just kind of like to preach it as often as possible and get as many people involved as possible and get people to branch out a little bit and not go with the same old 2 or 3 recipes. And that's all they do with their wild game. So,
yeah. And just so everybody knows, Michael and Mike are two of our celebrity judges for our Wild Game Showdown at the Pope and Young Convention, April 9th. Going to be a phenomenal time. So I want to ask both of you guys, as part of your introduction, how did you get started in wild game cooking? Like, what's your background in wild game cooking, Michael?
I've been cooking wild game all my life. Grew up in a hunting family. We've always processed our own wild game, always cooked it. My grandmothers, my mom always cooked, kind of got me interested. I think my love of cooking goes back to Sunday mornings as a kid and Justin Wilson, the Cajun chef on TV. I would come home on Sunday afternoon and I would watch Bill Dance and Roland Martin and Babe Winkleman and Justin Wilson. And that kind of got me interested in cooking through college. Worked in restaurants to get through college. And my roommates and I pretty much subsisted off wild game just to try to save a little bit of money. And over the years, I just started doing some different recipes and trying to expand my wild game repertoire, just trying to come up with new and different ways to use game meat in various recipes. So if we go to a restaurant and we find a recipe we really like, we'll go home and try to replicate that with venison or fish or small game or waterfowl or something, that we've got in the freezer. And just kind of go like that.
Very cool. So last but not least, Foodie Mike C. Give us an introduction.
Yeah, my name is Mike Castaneda. I'm a 39-year-old disabled veteran who was named one of the top 10 cooks in America on Food Network. Since then, I've got to travel around and cook for some pretty awesome people like the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Royals, done some charity work with the Dallas Cowboys, international touring bands, and it's been pretty wild. No pun intended. I connected with Dylan, and he had this idea like, hey, let's do this show where, I'll go hunt something, you cook something, and we'll show, people how they can make some good food at home. And, Michael, I really appreciate what you said and the fact that I've always been like an outside the box kind of a cook. Like I was a food writer for a Traeger when I first started, and everyone was doing bacon wrap this and that. And that was just the thing. That's what everybody wanted to do. I'm like, well, let's, use the grill to make peach cobbler cupcakes and weird things that you wouldn't normally associate with grilling. So that was kind of my approach with Dylan as well. We're not making just chili and whatever, we're going to do some outside the box thinking and make this food not only more palatable, but, more desirable for the fact that it is a healthier meat and, fairly easily accessible depending on your skill level, I guess. But that's a little outside my realm. But
there's been some times where I've promised you some wild game and we didn't have wild game.
There's been a couple times that it's a little hard to come by, but that's the fun of the sport, though.
And Justin, you might be able to speak to this better, but what I'm so excited about these two guys coming to be judges is I think they're both going to have just a complete different take on the food, because Michael grew up wild game cooking. Mike grew up just as a chef who is now, trying to incorporate wild game. And so I think it's going to be really cool to kind of have both those different takes as part of the judging system. Now, Justin, I want to talk real quick before we kind of dive into the Wild Game Showdown, because a lot of times Pope and Young gets that bad stigma of like, well, you're just trophy hunters. Like, all you do is hunt for antlers. And we want to show people that while, I want to kill a bigger, more mature animal, I still utilize that meat. Like, all of that meat is still feeding my family. So I'm not just hunting for quote unquote a trophy. So what would you say along those lines as far as, Pope and Young being more than just a trophy hunting group of people?
Well, I mean, the history of that and trophy, obviously it's got a negative connotation, but if you look at the history of conservation, trophy hunting came into effect because, the wildlife populations were not able to sustain, the harvest of immature males and females. And so this idea of only shooting the mature male, I mean, that came about as a way to ensure hunting continued. Man, conservation's been, hugely successful. It's not a big deal now if you go out and shoot that spike. It's not a big deal. And they're all bow hunters, right? And so, yes, I mean, that selective aspect of it is great. Honestly, I mean, when people ask why, I'm selective on my hunting, obviously I love to eat wild game. That's all we eat. If I wasn't seeing enough deer, I'd shoot the first legal deer that came by. But, if you're out there enough and you enjoy spending time out there, trying to select the biggest one gives you a bigger backstrap at the end of the day. So, no, we're not only trophy hunting.
True.
I mean, our biggest concern is that wildlife and wild places are out there for everybody, that bow hunting is, celebrated and respected for the history. And so this is, great opportunity for us to kind of highlight that other piece. And, other people, anytime I get the chance to talk about trophy hunting, I mean, the non-hunting public's idea of trophy hunting is we lop the head off and leave the rest of the animal out there. Well, I'm lopping the head off to make head cheese. We have to use all that meat, and so it's not even legal in the U.S. to really do what people classify as trophy hunting. And so this is a great way to show that, not only do we like the big racks to hang our hats on, we use every bit of it and try to make it as delicious as possible to feed our family and show off to our friends our skills.
I used to think I utilized most of my animals, and then I met Justin, and I'm like, man, I've got a lot more that I could be utilizing. Like we just did an upland hunt, and Mike and Justin came up with this brainchild to make Chick-fil-A chicken minis out of the quail. Just absolutely phenomenal. Like one of my favorite things maybe I've ever had in my lifetime. Delicious.
Did you do head cheese with the quail?
We did not.
About 6 million.
And then Justin, I went to like throw the carcasses out. We had cleaned the birds and used the meat, and he's like, "No, you got to make a broth. So you got to utilize the whole bird." And I'm like, okay. Like I didn't even. Anyways, so what I can tell you is Justin Spring, like if you go to his house, he is utilizing every bit of every animal he kills, which is cool. And things that like just trigger in my mind. I'm like, wow, I never even would have considered doing that. Now let's get on to this showdown. So how this is going to work. Brooks, do you want to walk them through the system that they're going to have? Because a lot of people that are going to be listening to this are teams that have entered and using this as kind of a rundown to what to expect. What are they going to look for going into this? So they've got a Pro 16. So what is a Pro 16?
The Pro 16 is a 3-burner stove. It's got 3 30,000 BTU burners. So both Michael and Mike can attest to this, that commercial kitchens burners are about 15 to 18,000. You might get one up to 20,000 BTUs, 22 on the high end. But these are 30,000 BTU burners. So there's a lot of pressure.
I'll tell you right now, those things get hot. Get hot.
There's a lot of pressure and a lot of heat, so you can do a lot with it. Also, can withstand all the elements. So the Pro 16 stove, and then you'll have a barbecue box and a griddle to go with it. So you'll have a flat top griddle that can fit over the burner, and you'll have a grill box so you can grill and flat top cook.
Very cool. Now, here's the coolest part of the whole thing. Just by entering as a team, you get to keep that system. we are giving you that system, which that covers your price of admission right there, just getting to keep that cooking system. So we are incredibly excited to partner with Camp Chef on this. I have been a longtime fan of Camp Chef. So when Justin said, what if we started convention with a Wild Game Showdown? I'm like, well, there's not many other people to partner with outside of Camp Chef. So Brooks and the team at Camp Chef so gratefully came on, and we're just excited to make this a great event. And again, you get to keep that system, which is just phenomenal. We also have some prize packages for meat, some process packages. So the winning teams can take home some pieces to help process your meat when you get home. Going to be super cool. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us this morning. He had the flu, but that's going to be a really cool piece, and we're excited to get those guys involved and get them working on this showdown as well. So, gentlemen, first off, before I go into kind of what you're going to be looking for in the Wild Game Showdown, given that system, and I'm going to start with Justin. Given that you could bring any wild game you've got with you right now, what would you be cooking?
We got some big fat mallards, and I've been cooking a lot of duck lately, so I'd probably do something there. We got some great late season birds. You did not get me a duck in Kansas, so I'm trying to make up for it now that I'm back home.
Wow.
But yeah, probably, on that flat top, a seared duck breast of some sort. Maybe, again, you mentioned that I like to use the carcasses in a broth. Maybe some type of ramen broth or something to put that duck in, maybe a tom kha soup or something with that amount of time in those burners that I could let that kind of simmer all day. That's kind of my idea when we put this together, is they've got a day to cook. Kind of the basics of the rules. You can't bring, nothing can be seasoned ahead of time. You bring your wild game. You're not limited on ingredients or anything, but anything has to be that you're bringing in that was processed previously has to be shelf stable. So like a sausage, something that's relatively shelf stable that they could incorporate. So maybe some broth or something from some birds they did ahead of time. But yeah, with a day, I do some type of pretty fancy duck dish and go from there would be my initial thought, just because that's what I'm thinking right now.
Now, because you mentioned it, go ahead and give kind of the timeline of this. Do they start 9 a.m. and they have to give the chef the judges their plate at 6 p.m.? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wide open, being this is our inaugural event. So I'm thinking of starting at 9 a.m. at 5 p.m. These guys will judge. That's going to run right into our welcome reception, our kind of pint night, the kicking the convention off that night. And so there's going to be two categories they're competing for. Obviously, we've got our judges kind of choosing the winner of it, and then the other piece, if the teams want to have a sampling, those people that come to Pint Night are able to go try it and vote for people's choice. And so we have to be very careful with wild game. Obviously we can't sell it or anything. And so if they elect to make something that people want to choose and try, they can. So there's actually going to be two winners. In terms of what they're doing, we left it kind of wide open. It's a box of food, right? In the rules, it says that wild game there has to be a major wild game component in each of it. That's going to be up to our judges to decide whether or not they would consider what the teams have done a major component. Putting a piece of duck on, a Uncle Ben's, rice pilaf that you made that had nothing to do with wild game, I would say is not a major component. But, again, that's what our judges are, going to be looking for, and why we have them on here to kind of talk through it, and it's, and yeah, like I said, they'll do that judging and pick their winner, and then we'll let the other folks try the stuff that's left over.
All right, Brooks, what would you be making, man?
Man, I'm like going through my mind right now. There's so many things. It's a toss up between two things. I would do something at venison range. Something that I've really liked recently is a homemade venison parmesan.
Ooh.
I think
everybody's head nodded.
Yeah, so I would love to take a softer cut, and pound it out into medallions, and pound it out so they're all the same thickness, and you can get them to pound them out about that big. You start with the medallion about that big and pound it out. Season it. I like to put just a little bit of smoke on it in a smoker, but obviously we won't be able to do this. If you wanted to get really creative, you could take the barbecue box and toss. If you brought some wood chips, you could put some wood chips under that tray, so you could add a little bit of smoke flavor. And then, go put it through a wash and bread it. I lightly fry it, very lightly fry it. You don't want to overcook the venison, especially when you pound those medallions down. And then make a homemade sauce and serve it. I would finish it in the grill box on a low setting to melt the cheese. Mozzarella on there, farm. And then I would probably serve it over like a bucatini noodle with a homemade sauce. So that's something that comes to mind. I mean, a traditional backstrap done right is really hard to beat. There's a backstrap that I love to do where I incorporate like just a blackberry wine reduction sauce, garlic, rosemary, thyme, some blackberries, some preserves, and just really reduce that down. And for some odd reason, that sauce over the top of a perfectly seared backstrap is really delicious. But I think the venison parmesan would probably be where I'd go. Obviously, garnish it with some parsley and some other stuff. So there'd probably be a few secret ingredients that I put in there to hold close to my chest, so I could walk away as a winner. But yeah,
sounds like you need to enter a team, man.
There you go.
Sounds like you better come on down to convention, enter your team.
I'd have like a major. I'm just talking a big top. Put it that way.
That's me, dude.
Actually, on my board right here, I just wrote up a couple recipes that I looked online. It was one from Mike and one from Michael, and I just read it.
Yeah, that's what I always do. Yeah, I talk a big game, but then I burn the
cereal.
Lego my Egos. Yeah, like I can't even. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. That or mac and cheese with hot dogs.
There you go.
Yeah. Hey, you can't go wrong with that. Can't go wrong with that. I actually, funny you say that. I had some deer brats made up this year, some jalapeno cheddar deer brats, and my mom came into town and made some homemade mac and cheese, and I'm like, wait a second. Mm-hmm. And so I threw some of those on the Camp Chef smoker and got them nice and threw them in the mac and cheese. It was crazy good.
That sounds delicious. That's awesome.
Again, no real cooking on my behalf because I just threw the brats on the smoker and let them get hot and then chopped them up and threw them in mac and cheese. But I can do that kind of stuff all day long. You want like a fried Uncrustable? I got you. Like that kind of stuff's easy. But all right, gentlemen, I'm excited to hear from the two that we have named judges. Given this time frame, given these cooking systems, you could bring, and I'm not going to put any limitations on you guys as far as what wild game you have. So any wild game you want in the world, what are you making for us?
I would probably go kind of a two-stage recipe on this one. Maybe a soup and sandwich slant. Ooh. I would take maybe a section of venison or elk backstrap. I'd put it on that grill box with some wood chips at a low temperature. Slow smoke that to about 120. Take it off, let it rest. Sear it on that flat top. Get a really nice sear on the outside. This is an entire section of roast, backstrap roast that I would do like that. Then slice it. Maybe put that on a toasted crostini, maybe with a little cheese on top. And serve that up with maybe a waterfowl and sausage gumbo. And have maybe a soup and sandwich slant to it.
Oh my gosh.
We just lost Dylan. I think we just lost him.
Listen, take it from a guy. Take it from a guy who grew up in Southern Arkansas. You find a guy who can cook and it's going to be good. You find a guy who can cook sophisticated, it's going to be stupid good. I got to ask you a question, Michael. You ever done wild game boudin?
I have. We've done a combination venison and squirrel boudin. And cooked it up, put it in the casings, and then slow smoked it. And boudin's one of my favorite meals. Give me a good hunk of boudin. We spend a lot of time down in Louisiana during duck season, cooking for some of the Realtree camps. And boudin's always on my menu down there. So you can't go wrong with that.
Oh, my Lord.
Dylan, you didn't say anything. That's the secret to making a swan edible. We've got swan boudin in the freezer right now.
Do you? Listen, no offense. I don't trust anybody from Montana to make boudin. Like, no offense. Listen, I don't even trust people from Arkansas to make boudin. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that I trust you on this. I got to call you maybe off air, Michael. I grew up loving squirrel. My grandma made squirrel that would just blow your mind. I don't hunt them and I don't kill them because I can't make them. Like, I can't make them taste good. So I'm going to have to call you. My grandma always made buttered squirrel. I don't know how she did it, what voodoo magic she sprinkled on it. It probably wasn't even squirrel. She probably just got chicken and told us it was squirrel. But it was always so good, and I just can't cook them. So I'm going to have to get your advice on that. All right, Mike, what are you going with?
I feel like lately I've been doing a lot of like Indian or Thai kind of influence, and I like to mix it with, my Hispanic heritage. So I would want to do something maybe like samosas, but maybe do like a venison chorizo or something with it. We've been doing some chorizo and it's been pretty amazing. Obviously, we need to add a little bit of fat to it to, make it a little more palatable. But it's basically like this beautiful wrapped mashed potato that has, you can put some cheese in there. Like I said, if you wanted to do some like venison chorizo, but you have like the garam masala, your cumin flavors, like turmeric, things like that. And then maybe make some sort of beautiful crema, like poblano crema dipping sauce for the samosa. So you're mixing the Indian flavor with the Mexican flavors.
Good grief. Now,
I
so
appreciate knows when people are doing things outside the box, you know what I mean? But with that being said, I love basic things as well. I'm all about, doing some mac and cheese and hot dogs or a, hamburger helper or something like that. I'm not a picky dude by any means, but I think when people want to take a risk and do something a little more special or elevated, a little more creative, I think that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for. But ultimately, I just want the best bite of whatever somebody can make.
I actually was telling Justin the other day, like, what I appreciate about you is like you can make, and you do make all this sophisticated food, but you'll just throw down on some like nasty white trash stuff too. Like,
whatever it takes, man.
And I gave him the example of making the ramen burritos with just packaged ramen and popcorn chicken from Walmart that one time. And it was just crazy good, but it was just
throw some sauces together or something. And it's beautiful. Yeah.
There are a lot of great companies making a lot of great bows. Pretty much, if you go buy a new bow today, it's going to be a good shooting bow. However, very few bow companies are still single family owned. Even fewer bow companies are Christian owned, which is a very important value to me. And third, very few companies are really looking to push the needle in innovation. That is why I align myself with Prime. Prime, when I made the switch to Prime and I got my hands on this RVX 32 right here, I spent so much time with that bow. I put so many arrows through it. I took it on several different hunts in several different climates and put it just through about anything you can put a bow through. And it performed in every way that I needed it to. It shoots really well. It balances really well. Super high quality. The materials that go into it are great. And then in 2025 comes the form, which just goes to show you that Prime is really looking to move the needle in archery innovation, which is something that's important to me. So guys, that is why I align myself with Prime. I would highly encourage you to go to a Prime dealer and shoot the bows. I would highly encourage you to go to g5prime.com and check out their full lineup. Prime makes a phenomenal bow, but it's also a company that I can feel good about standing behind and supporting. So go check out Prime for your next bow. Now, just so everybody knows, on this podcast, we do a monthly special called Cook Wild. That monthly special is brought to you by Camp Chef. So what happens is once a month, Mike is in the studio and he makes something just crazy good. And then he teaches you how to make it step by step so that you can try it at home too. This last month, and we're going to kind of incorporate the Cook Wild into this episode. But this last month, we made, Justin came down and we hunted pheasant and quail. We were supposed to hunt ducks and geese, but I suck. So that didn't happen. So we had pheasant and quail. Walk us through, Mike, how you made these chicken minis.
So this is something I've actually been doing for years with my chicken. Uh, I love to essentially just butterfly it open, make smaller pieces, whatever you want to do. And so whether it's my chicken sandwiches or I'm doing these minis, I'm doing a quick brine with pickle juice, and then you could really do it with dry brine as well, but it's not going to kind of be that same thing if you're using dill, some sugar, salt, whatever the case might be. So the easiest thing you can do is just literally drain some of this pickle juice into the meat that you have, let it sit for a few hours, and then I'm just making a nice wash, doing your breading and coating that. But to kind of give it the consistency of Chick-fil-A, I kind of started like blitzing my flour and seasoning with a little bit of crackers just to kind of give it a little extra texture. It'll help with color as well. But I mean, it's literally one of the easiest, quickest things that you can do. I mean, you're literally just soaking the meat in pickle juice, and depending on the thickness will kind of dictate how long you're doing it. But I mean, it's simple, it's delicious, and obviously it's a winner for everybody. Anyone who tries it, I mean, they just fall in love.
Tucker, which is my son, he's 6. I made him the very next day, and he had like 7 or 8 of them, like just pounding them out, and kept asking for more. And I'm like, no, you can't have any more. We're out. They were crazy good. My wife was like, you made homemade honey butter rolls? And I'm like, yeah, Mike taught me.
He said, yes, I did.
And so, all right. So, Brooks, I want to take a step back, and I want to talk about Camp Chef a little bit. Where did the mission behind cooking outdoors come from? Like, how did Camp Chef get its start? Because you guys really, I mean, if you take a look at the Camp Chef website, it is no matter where you're at, no matter what, I mean, whether you're, packing in the back country and you just need a little single burner, or whether you're on the back deck with a smoker, they have something for you to cook outdoors, which is just really cool for hunters. But where did this idea come from? Like, where did Camp Chef get this start?
You just opened a big can of worms, so I'm more than happy to explain. No, so 30 years or 35 years ago, it was actually 1990, the founder of our company, he was cooking for a bunch of Boy Scouts. I don't know, maybe 15, 20 kids. And you know how 12 to 15-year-old kids get, or 11 to 15, however old they were at the time. And he was trying to keep them hungry in a camp, and it wasn't working. He was like, what's going on here? What do we have to cook with? Like, this just doesn't work. All he had was a real small 2-burner stove, like a suitcase style stove, which is a great camping stove. But if you're going to cook for a large crowd, it's a little harder. And so he's like, there's got to be a better way. So when he got back from that camping trip with those scouts, he started to try to find a better way. He could not find one. And he's like, fine, he's an engineer. He's like, I'll create one. And that's when he designed, which is our Pro 14 stove, the very first iteration of it, 35 years ago. And he designed that Pro 14 stove with the thought that this is the better way to cook outdoors, because this is going to be a modular cooking system. Something that in the morning for a large group, I can put a flat top on it that covers 2 big burners that I could put 15 to 20 hotcakes on. Or I can cook a whole, pan of bacon, or 2 or 3 packages of bacon at a time. Sausage, whatever it is. I don't care what you're making. He's like, I need something that's modular. I need something that puts out good heat that can withstand the elements, because if you're outdoors, wind is a factor. I need something that can withstand that. And wind is always everybody's nemesis, and it's not perfect. But we've created some ways to kind of counteract that. But anyway, so that was his whole plan. And that's where the concept of Camp Chef was founded. And from there, it grew to cast iron. Well, it grew from a 2-burner stove to a 3-burner stove, to various accessories that fit on the stove, to cast iron, that then started into back to smaller car camping stoves, just because that was a market for somebody that's cooking for less than, say, 5 people. And then into smokers and back patio equipment, from flat top grills that are more standard patio unit flat top grills, and to pellet grills. So, yeah, that's kind of the gist of where Camp Chef was founded, and how we helped create, a better way to cook outdoors. And that's really the concept and our MO here at the office. So.
And that's something that I think a lot of people, I don't want to use the word take for granted, but don't wrap their minds around. Like, it's easy, if you go on a family camp out to cook for, your wife and your 3 kids, like that's easy. You take one of the, like you said, a little 2-burner suitcase stove, and you can do that. But once you start getting like an elk camp with 10, grown men who are, eating 17,000 calories a day, it's like, how do you cook for this many people on a little 2-burner? And it's something that, like, once you try it and you're like, I need a better solution. Then you try, like you said, a 16, a Pro 16, even a Pro 14. And you're like, man, this is, now I can not only cook outdoors, but I can cook for a lot of people, a lot of food outdoors. And so I've seen Camp Chef, man. I've seen it in all different scenarios, situations. Like I said, on the back deck during a football game, at Mike's house by the pool. Mike made some Philly cheesesteak pizza and never even had to get out of the pool. Like, he had the pizza oven on the Pro 16 cooking from the water, and made a venison Philly cheesesteak pizza inside of his pool. And I'm like, Camp Chef rocks, dude. Justin's throw down some crazy Mongolian bowls in the mountains at his house. I mean, I've seen it work in so many different ways.
I just got back I just came in yesterday. I was up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at a press event up there, and we were cooking for some outdoor riders. Or they were cooking. We were giving them an experience to use the stoves, but it was minus 12, so it was cold. And we had the pizza ovens fired up, and our pizza ovens were holding temp. We had 3 Pro 14 stoves set up with the 2 pizza ovens on each stove, so we had 6 ovens. And minus 12 degrees, and that pizza oven was holding temp right around 750, 800 degrees. The stove was sitting right around 600 degrees. And we were able to turn 40, like, there's 45 people, 45 pizzas in about 20 minutes. I mean, we were turning a pizza every 3 on each stove or each oven. We were turning the pizza about every 3 to 4 minutes. And that's in minus 12 temp. That just, that's kind of the benefit behind that burner. And we're keeping them on low medium just because they put out so much heat, even in the cold temps. And like you said, the pizza oven is an incredible accessory that fits on that stove. That whole stove is so modular, from a flat top grill to a pizza oven to a grill box, and then any pots and pans and sauces. I mean, I'm sure both Mikes can attest to this. You find a trained chef, and all you need to do is give them a cast iron skillet and a heat source, and they can make you about anything. And that's really what you can do with our stove.
Yeah. So I'll say this: if you want the pizza oven for the convention, just go to Camp Chef and have that ordered. I would imagine they can bring additional tools like that, right, Justin?
Yeah, they can add whatever. Just they need to use the piece that comes with it. So, if they want to buy an additional piece or something else from Camp Chef and use it, that's up to them. They want to bring a second stove, they're going to go real crazy. That's on them. We're giving them the Pro 14 and then the box, but they can go anything else that they want to bring in addition to that is up to them, but they're responsible for it.
So if you have any pizza recipes in mind, that like Brooke said, will fit right on that Pro 16, and you'll have a incredible pizza oven right there at the convention to use. That's my favorite. That gets utilized probably the most in my house. We make pizzas all the time out in that thing. All right, gentlemen, for Mike and Michael, so Justin alluded to it has to be, Wild Game has to be the primary piece in the recipe. So, and I don't really know how to word this, but like, what are you going to be looking for to make sure that the Wild Game is the primary focus of said dish?
I'm going to be looking, look at the dish overall, make sure that it incorporates. I want to be able to recognize that there's wild game in it. I don't want to look at a dish and taste a dish, and it might taste great, but if I can't tell that it's game meat of some sort, I'm going to be a little curious. I want to see the actual wild game in the dish, be able to recognize it. Bonus points if I can tell what kind of wild game it is. If I can look at this and say, yeah, this is pheasant, or this is waterfowl of some sort, or this is venison. Those are bonus points in my book.
All right, I want to take a step back because of what you just said. So many people, and I used to be in the same boat. And And then I start hanging out with people like Mike and Justin, and I realize you don't want to hide the wild game. You want to accentuate the flavors of the wild game. So many people are trying a pursuit to figure out how to make it not taste like wild game. Yeah. That they want to, they say they want to get all the gaminess out of it, the quote unquote gaminess. Tell me why that's not the route to go. And then tell me, how do you go about utilizing the taste of venison to work in a recipe, the taste of pheasant to work in a recipe?
Yeah. For me, I think that might go back to some handling practices that might not have been that great so long ago. Everybody wants to show off their trophy buck, but you wouldn't take a prime rib from the grocery and toss it in the back of your truck and drive it around for 2 days in 70-degree weather to show all your buddies and then expect it to taste good. So I think any type of wild game, when properly handled, it's got the flavor to shine on its own. You don't have to hide it. You shouldn't try to hide it. Just kind of let that wild game shine. And, as long as you handle it right, as long as you process it right, I don't think there's a stigma at all about wild game flavor. I think it's just like any other meat. It's got its own flavor, and, you should incorporate that into the recipe.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, like, you're wanting me to try to make this taste like beef, and that's not going to happen because it's not beef.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to Walmart and buys chicken and says, "Can you make this taste like beef?" No, because it's chicken. Like, I cannot do that. So I like what you said there. I want to know that this is wild game. I don't want you to, man. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think me and Brooks talked about this a long time ago on an episode. So many people like ice bath their venison until it's like white.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? You're pulling all of the flavor out of this meat. All right, Mike, what are you going to be looking for?
I just wanted to make sense. Like it was said, don't make a duck breast and just throw it on some Uncle Ben's rice. There's a difference from that to making like a jambalaya, where you have like this beautiful meat with rice and all of this stuff. So it just needs to make sense to me. There's a million different combinations that you can use, different spices, all these things. Like, just put in the effort.
Right. Now, Justin, do you want to kind of outline what this looks like for people not competing for the entire day? If you're not in the wild game contest, we'll still have stuff going on for you. Like you said, this is in collaboration with our pint night. So do you kind of want to walk through, encouraging people still come hang out with us? Like, even if you're not cooking, it's going to be a fun day. It's going to be a great day. You'll get to taste some food. But what else do we have going on that day?
We've got seminars and whatnot. The convention's starting to fire up, but man, food's a universal language. When we set up these team size, I said, 1 to 5 people, and that's not even that strict. Bring your whole family, and I want people wandering around chatting with folks. What are you cooking here? A lot of my cooking comes from, watching stuff that, Michael will post on Facebook, and I'll see it. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. And then I try to tweak it a little bit, that's the forum here. Talk to these guys. What are you doing? Why are you making this? I kind of want to go back a little bit to the wild game and the handling of it. I've kind of started this thing where I'm trying to eat all 41 ducks, because ducks got this stigma that it's bad. And do some ducks have a stronger flavor? Certainly, but you don't serve a whole chunk of a diver duck seared like you would a mallard. One thing I did on that strong flavored duck, I actually turned it into a deviled egg. I chopped it up and seared it in some like maple syrup to give it a sweetness. And then that deviled egg, added some orange components, finished it with some orange zest. It tasted like an orange duck deviled egg. And that was with a king eider, which is the biggest sea duck out there. And so there's always a way, to really take what that game animal feels like, or what the flavor profile is, and use it. And it's not always just a straight piece of meat. I mean, there's sausages and different things out there that we cook with a lot. that you wouldn't want to just throw on the grill and eat straight. And some of those stronger flavored wild game, that's the case. In terms of incorporating it, this is what, when we were down there, Dylan, what I was going to try to do when we were in Kansas there with that duck, I was going to try to do a confit of those quail and then take the duck carcasses and make a stock out of that, do a risotto, maybe throw in some wild mushrooms, and then finish that confit duck, pull it and finish it with a gravy made out of that duck stock. That's how you can incorporate 2 wild game. Those, in my opinion, that would be, wild game's kind of the star of the dish, and you're going to taste that. So that was where my mind kind of went as we were putting those rules together. Does that make sense to you, Mike and Michael? Does that sound like something that you'd be looking for? Or?
Oh, absolutely.
I'll be honest. Everything you just said went right over my head. Would I still try it and eat it? Of course. But I'm like, I don't know what you're making here, but sounds good. All right, gentlemen. Last but not least, what's your favorite wild game? Maybe it's a singular recipe. Maybe it's just a species of meat. And then what's your least favorite wild game? I'll be honest. I'm not one of those guys that just sits back and says wild game's the best thing ever, no matter what it is. I've had bad wild game and meat that I just simply don't like. So what is your favorite wild game and what's your least favorite wild game? We'll start with you, Brooks.
I'm always first. You got to give me time to form a thought.
All right. We'll start with you, Mike.
I'll
start opposite this time. We'll start with you, Mike.
I could just say just some of the great things that we've made that have really stuck out. We've done I believe it was elk that we did.
Beijing.
The Chinese
Beijing
food,
elk.
That was amazing because
yeah.
we did the whole velveting process, made it super tender, so ton of flavor, and I mean it was just amazing. But we've also, gone fishing and made ceviche, and that was incredible. I mean, just so bright and fresh, and the bear meatloaf, that we did. So I mean, there's a lot of really cool things that we've done, and I don't know that I've necessarily had anything terrible, or anything that was kind of off-putting as far as flavor.
You never had coyote lasagna.
Yeah. So, I think as far as like the whole game that is different for me, I mean, honestly, just venison is probably the one that was, I don't know how to say it without it sounding bad, but like the least palatable, I guess. But even with that being said, I mean, everything we've made so far has just been, really good. So it's difficult to say.
All right, Michael, sorry.
My 2 favorite wild games, and it goes just about any way I prepared them. I don't get either one of them very often, but when I do, I always enjoy it. That's sandhill crane and moose. For some reason, moose for me is the absolute king of any venison. I love it. We don't have a lot of moose in Kentucky, so I don't get it very often, but every now and then I do. My least favorite, and just like Justin mentioned, there are ways to make them just really exceptional, and that's some of the sea ducks. Some of the divers, some of the sea ducks, especially if they've been in really silty areas for a while, they can have a little bit of a strong flavor. So you have to take a little more care to kind of incorporate that flavor into other flavors for those, for me.
All right, Justin.
I was on Team Moose until about a year ago. I agree it's about as good, but I had a buddy that got an oryx down in New Mexico.
Oh,
and we did that. As you mentioned, we did the whole backstrap roast. Did basically a reverse sear on it. On the pellet smoker, finished it on a cast iron, and then really didn't do anything to it. Had a little bit of a mustard-based barbecue that we whipped up to dip that in, and it actually beat moose. I didn't think that was possible. That was my go-to, but that oryx, that backstrap from that oryx was above and beyond exceptional. I couldn't believe it. And honestly, I mean, for the opposite end, and it's not even just sea ducks. It's a particular duck from a particular area because I cooked it wrong so many times when I was younger, and that's widgeon from the Oregon coast that have been living in the bay that taste like the bay and smell like garbage. I still have not figured out. I can make it palatable, but I haven't made it good yet.
All right, Brooks, I saved you for
Well,
last.
You sure did. It gave me lots of time to formulate a thought. I'm like second of these guys with moose. Moose is unbelievable. I've always in the past gravitated towards antelope pronghorn. I love pronghorn. If it's taken,
Really?
there's a smell to it that turns them off. But if you take care of that pronghorn, I know it's been mentioned, like the way you treat your animal the second that you kill it is really going to affect how that meat tastes. I mean, keep all the guts off it. Don't let hit the bladder or urine. Like people are so aggressive and aren't careful, and then stuff like that will touch the meat and taint it and ruin it. So you got to really take care of it. So anyway, pronghorn was a favorite of mine. However, the best piece of wild game red meat I've ever had was zebra.
Oh, wow.
This is a kid that
Interesting.
grew up on a farm that loves horses and has horses, and thought to myself, I would never in a million years eat a horse. It just doesn't sound normal or good or right. And a zebra's really, I mean, I know it's a horse, but it's not. When we had it in Africa, had no desire to hunt one, nor did I, but somebody else did in camp. And when we cooked that over the open fire on a braai with some camphor wood, it was unbelievable. It was like butter. It was better than any filet mignon I've ever had. It was so soft and so tender, and it was just lightly seasoned with salt and pepper and then cooked over the braai.
I want to eat a zebra now.
It was like pure protein. It was so good.
Mike said, I think I'm going zebra hunting now.
Least favorite. I would say I've had some weird critters. I was fortunate enough to hang out with Scott Leasath, the sporting chef, for many years, and I actually helped shoot a show. And when he was filming dead meat, we ate some pretty nasty stuff with dead meat.
I bet.
So, but I mean, there's some sea ducks that we did that they just weren't great, and we tried. We made them edible, but and some turned out okay. But and then uni was one that we harvested in San Diego area, and I just could not get on the uni bandwagon. Oh my gosh, no, thank you.
Now, this is by far not my favorite, but it is one that I come to love pretty quick. Has anybody else tried rattlesnake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is awfully good.
Yeah.
It's really good. One thing, I said that was the last question. I got one more. What's the one meat that you thought, and you've already mentioned it, zebra, but what's the one meat that you thought, like, going into, like, I'm not, I've heard bad things, I'm not real sure, and then it's just phenomenal. For me, that was javelina. You heard, oh, you can't even eat these things, they're trash, just throw them away. And then, part of it is the setting, part of it is being in camp with your buds, and you got an open fire, and we were in camp with some musicians, so they're playing guitar and singing, and you're just hanging out having fun. But we cooked some of those over the open fire, and it was like, dude, this is phenomenal. Like, I don't know what people are saying. What's that meat for you guys? Like the one that just you were kind of questioning and then turned out really good?
Who are you starting with?
Justin.
The antelope was the one that I had concerns. I heard it was horrible, and then we got a couple in Montana and took care of them. And yeah, it ranks right up there with moose for us. I've done all kinds of things with antelope. We actually smoked. We cooked an entire antelope over an open fire one year at antelope camp. I spent didn't have a tag, everybody else did, and man, that was one that people say is horrible, but you get it skinned out and cooled down quick. Montana, we have the advantage of a October season, so the temperatures aren't usually as hot, so we've got a little bit bigger window. But the area I hunt has a lot of grain fields, and that's what they're eating, and you take care of them. And yeah, I've served it to a bunch of people that have said, oh, I don't like antelope, and we'll have them over, and they don't even believe it's antelope. So that for me was probably the biggest turnaround.
Now, I want to ask both of you guys this, because I've never antelope hunted. I'm now putting in for Montana to go with Justin, but I hear that one of the biggest things about keeping your antelope good is keeping the hair off of them. Like, just they shed because, like you said, it's so hot, and then you got hair everywhere. Is there any truth to that?
I mean, I've always like anytime I've dealt with big game, I've been fortunate enough to have a walk-in cooler ever since I was a kid, and so we always hang our quarters, and I'll actually skin that meat again, that crust on the outside of it, and so if I get some hair on it when I'm packing something out of a nasty hole or whatever, obviously I try to avoid it, but I always cut that off the outside. And so that's never been a huge concern for me. I wouldn't cook with it on there. I'd clearly get rid of it. And if you're not going to do that, yeah,
Right.
it could be a bigger deal. But just the way that I was always taught to take care of wild game, we end up basically skinning it again. So it's not as big of an issue if you do kill one in a nasty spot and you have to throw it in a backpack with, proof of sex still attached. You skin it again and you take care of all that.
Right. Very cool. All right, Michael, what's that meat for you that you questioned?
Bobcat. Bobcat being a predator. I always heard that predators just weren't that great, and finally got a chance to cook one. And mountain lion as well, same family. They
mountain lion's delicious,
surprisingly good. I mean, like a really mild pork. One of the bobcat recipes we did one time, we took a hind quarter from a large cat and brined it just like a ham. Brined it for about a week and then smoked it in the Camp Chef, and it turned out phenomenal. We sliced it thin. We ate it on crackers. We ate it for breakfast. It was just a really surprising meat for me.
Yeah, I can second that. I've actually never had bobcat, but on mountain lion, I highly questioned it, and then you have it, and you're like, "Oh my Lord, this is delicious." Mike, what about you?
I think mine would be more of just the fear of the safety of it, but bear. I had no idea kind of what I was getting myself into with bear, but just from all like the horror stories of people getting sick and things like that, that was one that obviously you treat it right, it's going to treat you right, but that's probably it.
Well, and what I always tell people, like, you don't cook chicken, you don't avoid chicken just because you have to cook it to 165.
Sure.
Like, you don't just write chicken off completely. So why do you write bear off completely just because you got to cook it? Like, I would agree with that. I remember the first bear I killed and bringing it back home, and we I don't even remember the first thing we did with it, but I remember, kind of like torching it just to like make sure it was good, and then you realize, no, it's just like chicken. Put a thermometer in it, get it to 165, pull it and eat it. I mean, so guys, anything you want to say to the people? This will be the last time you get to speak to them before they come and prepare their food for you.
I'm looking forward to it. I really am. So,
yeah, I'm super excited. I want to walk around. I want to talk with people. I want to watch them cook. I want to see the ingredients they're using. I just think it's going to be a good time, good hangout.
The one thing is I know that some people have been like, oh, you're a little intimidated. And we're talking about some pretty fancy stuff, but man, I'm not sure something fancy I knock out the first time is going to beat that family recipe of a slow cooked bear or something that maybe you have a pulled bear sandwich. Right. I mean, you may have something that's super simple that takes the cake. And so don't think that the only way to win is going to be some super elaborate dish, man. At the end of the day, these guys are looking for wild game, knowing it's wild game, and a good preparation. So, bring what you got and learn from it. If you don't win, we're not here to give out scholarships or anything for winners or food careers. I mean, this is have some fun, utilize the wild game, and learn from everybody. So everybody's welcome. And
if you don't win, you still got a Camp Chef system to take home and practice. That's why we're giving you the system, because if you lose, you obviously need to practice more. So you get to take the system home and keep practicing. It's not often that a new company comes along in the archery world and just absolutely changes the game. However, that is exactly what Dialed Archery did when they entered the scene. Pretty much took the archery world by storm, and for good reason. Now, if you followed me, my review of the Arxos. There was some things I didn't like about the Arxos. However, when the proof was introduced, here's what they did. They took all of the customer feedback. They took all the customer feedback so well that I believe with the proof, they have created a perfect sight. They listened to what the archery world wanted and needed out of a sight, and that's what they got with the proof. It is completely redesigned. It's completely in every way. It's just a better site. They have improved on every issue that people had with the Arxos, and they have created, in my opinion, an absolute bomb-proof site. Completely customizable on the website. Colors, pin configuration, pin sizes, pin colors, completely customizable. You get exactly what you want right out of the box. Guys, I would highly encourage you to go check out Dialed Archery for your next site. You are going to get, here's what I promise you, you are going to get more yardage out of a sight tape. Now, for a guy who's relatively on the short side of a draw length, that's pretty important to me. I shoot a heavier arrow and I don't have an incredibly long draw length. So that rail giving me a little bit more out of my sight tape is something that's very important to me. However, all of the other features of the Proof make a bomb-proof sight. You can throw that thing around the mountain. You can drag it through the mud. It's going to perform every single time because Dialed has created, in my opinion, with the Proof, the perfect sight. Go check out dialedarchery.com for your next and your last bow sight. Guys, thank you so much for listening. April 9th through the 12th, Glendale, Arizona, Pope and Young Convention. We are so excited. It's going to be a great event. We've got some phenomenal guests coming. That would be my favorite part of this showdown, of like, not even these thugs trying my food, but like, you get to give it to, Chuck Adams and Remy Warren. And I mean, whoever else is Tom Miranda, Tom Nelson. I mean, all of these big name bow hunters that I grew up idolizing are going to be trying your food. I mean, that's just a really cool thing. So guys, make sure head over to pope-young.org. All of the convention information is there. You can sign your team up online and get entered for the Wild Game Showdown. But even if you're not entering as a team, it's going to be a super fun event. So come hang out with us. Thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.